Hi, STEM families. Thank you so much for taking the time to take a look at our presentation. I'll be talking a little bit about our community presentation on our secondary schedule proposals for the 21-22 school year. I'm going to go ahead and hop right into our presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. That way you can see what I'm presenting on. So why do we have a need for secondary schedule adjustments? There's a number of reasons that are listed here. I would also strongly encourage you to read some of the latest versions of Dr. Euchre's newsletter. She kind of takes a high level look that can provide some supporting information around why we have to look at adjusting our secondary schedules for next year. Two big reasons are that we didn't make any staffing adjustments from after the incident from the 18-19 school year. For a number of reasons, we decided that we wanted to keep the staff that we had, and we wanted to try and keep our community together as best as we could. And so we didn't make any adjustments to staffing or to our schedule, which means the number of course offerings that we have. And we didn't do it at the end of the 2019-20 school year either. Due to the pandemic, we didn't want to be in a position to where we were letting go of teachers during a very uncertain time, and also changing routines for students when we knew that there was going to be the possibility of some major changes coming up for the school year. So now that we went through 2 years without making any type of adjustments, we're kind of in a position to where our staffing is not is not in line with the number of students that we have. And so that means we have a few too many staff members for the number of students. And so what we have to do is called right sizing. Additionally, we have to look at our enrollment for next year and the numbers that we currently have that we're planning for. And then taking a look at how do we accommodate the students that we have with the staff that we have. And so on this slide, you can see that typically we try and have anywhere from about 25 to 28 students in a class. Some of our more specialized classes have somewhere over between closer to 30 students, depending on what the offering is, but we try and keep that average around 25 to 28 because we feel that that's a reasonable number for teachers. And so how we factor the funding is for every 25 students that supports one teacher. So it's always we're looking at enrollment numbers, we're looking at class sizes, we're looking at how the classes are being offered and the instructional time. So a lot of those factors. So this snapshot here just gives you a quick overview because I did mention enrollment and how that impacts our schedule. And so as you can see, the blue right there just gives you our K through 12 enrollment over the last few years. And that yellow shows you just our 6 through 12 enrollment. And so that's why our focus right now has been on the secondary side. It's because we've seen a little bit of a dip from the 18-19 school year to this current school year. The projection is that we're kind of hanging right around that 1193 number, give or take a few, but we're not projected to be around that 1280, which was our highest enrollment in secondary. And so that was at the end of this 17-18 school year, that was the last time that we really did an assessment of the number of teachers per student. So that's why we're having that discussion now. So just to give you a quick look at what we're hoping to plan to provide for our teachers next year as they come back. So more direct PBL implementation and support in the classroom by school level. That was not so much the case over the last 2 years. And so with the addition of Maura Ritter and Ms. Michelle Gasser, both in our coaching and our professional development areas, they are revamping those programs to provide more direct support based off of feedback that we've received in our teacher feedback survey, which is done every single month. So additional supports are going to be provided through targeted professional development training that will be focused on PBL and standards-based learning. Miss Liz Dugan, who took over the role as the head of school for our K through 12. So she's going to provide, continue in her role and solidify her supports for teachers, but from an elevated, if any elevated concerns come our way that the school directors can't handle. Ms. Magley Haberek will continue to support our middle school students. And we're in the final stages of the interview process for our assistant director, with the goal of that person moving into the high school role that Mr. Hoffman vacated as soon as they're ready to take on those responsibilities. Ms. Jenny Johnson will continue to support students and teachers through MTSS and RTI needs. So these are direct supports to our secondary teachers for next year. Additionally, we have Ms. Amy McElroy. She's our Dean of Students, and she assists with behavior management and restorative practices. She typically works through with grades K through 8, or she is also supporting in some instances with high school students when we need that. As I mentioned before, the coaching program is transitioning under Ms. Maura Ritter, and so the focus is going to be more on teacher instructional supports, which will be directly in the classroom. And professional development will continue to be expanded and improved upon by Ms. Michelle Gasser. And we have Dr. Johnson that's going to provide supports for units of studies, assessments, and standard-based learning. So these are the areas that we're looking at improving upon next year. So these are, we're forecasting how these different leaders are going to be in those, providing supports in those areas. So as we start talking about the secondary schedules, this just kind of gives you a little bit of an overview of where we're at right now. We had the initial proposal that was put together. It was a look at potentially what next year's schedule could look like. And that was the discussion around reducing the planning periods from 2 to 1. So we took that proposal to the teachers on Friday, March 26th, and presented that during the staff meeting. And a teacher task force was established, and you can see on the right-hand side, those were the teachers and the staff members that were part of that task force. And they were tasked with looking at the initial proposal and providing modifications that we could bring back to teachers to say, these are some, within certain parameters, this is what we could do. So they, 3 proposals were then presented to the teachers via a survey, and that was on Friday, April 2nd, and they were allowed to vote on that. And so where we're at right now is we want to bring the top 2 proposals to our families and our students to allow the opportunity for them to provide feedback on the proposal that they would like to, that they would like to see. And so as we move on here, this is the top proposal that came out of the teacher survey. And you see here, this had 40.5% of the teacher vote. Now this was just out of secondary teachers, as these changes only impact our secondary teachers. And so this proposal outlines that middle and high school would move to a traditional schedule with all 7 classes every single day. And here you can see what the pros and cons of those are, and I won't go through all of them, but essentially the biggest change is we are currently on a block schedule. So we're both middle and high school students have about 90 minutes per class, and this would reduce that from anywhere to class periods would be about 50 to 55 minutes per day. And so teachers would get a planned period every single day. And we are looking at how that would impact homework and even the discussions around would we even require homework. So there's a lot more discussion around this particular topic, but just know that we are, if this is the direction that we choose to go in, that there will be further discussions on details, that there isn't a larger lift placed onto students when it comes to homework and assignments and such. So, but we'll give you the opportunity there to read what those pros and cons are. And they'll also be available in the PDF presentation. The second proposal that we call Proposal 2, this had 31% of the secondary teacher vote. And this would be to have middle school move to a traditional schedule. So middle school students in grades 6 through 8 would have 7 class periods per day. Their middle school teachers would have 1 planned period per day. And on the high school side, that's grades 9 through 12, they would remain in a block schedule and have 90 minutes per class period. So what they currently have right now. And there you can see some of the pros and cons that are outlined by the teacher task force of this particular proposal. And so one of the big things to think about here is that in our elementary school, the students do have every subject every single day, with the exception of a special, which I believe is rotates every week. And so this proposal was put together to kind of help the transition for middle school students to still be able to be in a secondary environment, but still have somewhat of a schedule that they were used to when they were in elementary school. So you can view the pros and cons here, and also in the PDF presentation that is included in the message. So this is our last slide, and so this is our ask of our community. So please take a moment to complete the applicable surveys to weigh in on the two proposals in this presentation. The survey link is also available in the email that we'll send to you. So if you are a parent, please fill out the parent survey. If you are a student, please fill out the student survey. Both forms will close this Friday at 5. And we will provide an update next week with additional steps as to where we landed with all of the data. Okay, and so that is the end of our presentation. And so I want to thank you for taking the time to watch the video, and I look forward to seeing all of your responses. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And you can do so by emailing communications@stemk12.org.